This is day 2 of my attempt to make some daily vlogs, but I thought I would record this because I'm on like a little bit of a weird part of my hike where it's like off the beaten path, but look at that view over there. So I'm going hiking for probably like the second time that I've been in LA. And I was thinking back to New Year's Eve coming into 2019. I had this plan that I was originally going to come to LA and spend the entire time like by the beach doing city hikes, listening to audiobooks. And that's actually like one of the things that I like about LA, but since getting here, I just like haven't been able to do it. So I did come to this hike like at the beginning of my time here, and then I've done one other solo hike, and then this is another solo hike. But I kind of just wanted to get out and reground myself. But I guess I wanted to chat a little bit more about LA. I think I visited for the first time. So, okay, let's go back to like 2014 to 2016. I was working at a music startup called Revolt, and they were headquartered in Los Angeles, but had like a New York office that I was working out of. So I started making some trips out to LA, but I was staying mostly in like Hollywood area, and like I didn't really understand LA geography. And then it just so happened that I started dating someone who lived here from like 2017 until the end of 2018. So I started making like a couple more trips out here. But I also started getting to like explore more of the city on my own outside of work. So like I found a co-working space to work out of. I started reconnecting with friends who were living here. And so in 2019, I started to think a little bit more seriously about like potentially moving here. And at the time, I had been living in San Francisco for about 3 years and had like a complicated relationship with the city. Like I didn't really feel super safe there. I had my own experiences with anti-Asian violence and harassment. And so LA to me kind of just like felt like this big playground. And yeah, I would call LA like my favorite playground. And I felt like I got like LA clothes, like these cute maxi dresses, an LA hat, not this one. And yeah, I just felt like people here seemed a lot happier than foggy San Francisco. So it turns out that, so after that relationship ended, I told myself that I probably wouldn't want to do long distance anymore. And then in November of last year, I ended up coming to LA because I had a couple of like work related things, like there was like an app launch at the Grimm Museum, which seemed really cool. And then Diversability was actually getting an award. And while I was here, the location updated on my dating app, and I got a message from Greg, and he, and if I hadn't been doing this like 20-date challenge thing, I probably wouldn't have met up with him, but he actually ended up being my 20th date. And so fast forward to May, the end of May, I was touring. I had listed my apartment for rent and was actively touring. And it just so turns out that I ended up touring some people who like wanted to move in the next week. So that brought me to really fast forwarding my move. And I had actually made another plan to head out to Tulsa, but that's probably a video for another time. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna rent out my place in San Francisco and then I'm gonna head to Tulsa. And by that time, Greg and I had been dating for about 7 months, and we had a talk, and we were kind of just like, okay, we've been doing long distance. Should we try living in the same city to see if we still like each other? And so at the end of June, I ended up coming out here to LA. I brought one checked luggage with all of my clothes, but I had already left some clothes with Greg. And so that is the story behind my move to LA. I think that it puts a lot of pressure on a relationship to move, for that to be the reason to move out here. But I also knew that I did want to come out here before I had met Greg. And I think from a work perspective, I think I'm just still understanding the lay of the land. I have aspirations to want to get involved with LA 2028, the LA 28 games, Olympic and Paralympic games that are coming. And so, yeah, and I had gotten like a teeny glimpse of kind of like the city hiking that's all throughout the city. It's a little bit hotter here than I would like, but I am going with it. And tomorrow will actually mark 4 months since I left my place in San Francisco. And, you know, I was like ready to leave, but I think that having lived in that apartment for 6 years really made me take for granted, like, knowing that I would always come back from a trip and have a place to stay. And I remember my therapist telling me that she thought that there might be some like trauma stored in my San Francisco apartment. So all signs were pointing to, you know, eventually leaving that place. But I think when it came so suddenly, even though I had been like trying to rent my place for 13 months, it still felt a little bit abrupt. And so I think coming to LA and just having had to move around so many times, my co-working space closed abruptly at the end of August. We literally got an email and it was like, we're closing as of today, all of our locations. But, you know, like, I think it's just the reality of like a lot of businesses aren't making it through, and there's a threat of a recession coming. And if we haven't recession-proofed our businesses, this is probably what we're going to see more of happening. So that's a very long-winded story of how I ended up in LA. I'm still trying to figure out like which part of the city I eventually want to settle in. If I want to like commit and rent a place longer term, get like a longer term lease. Right now we've kind of been like Airbnb, month to month type thing. And I like the flexibility, but sometimes with a little bit more flexibility, it just introduces a little bit more uncertainty. So thanks for being here. That's day 2, and we will chat tomorrow.